Hey guys, welcome to a real quick video that I'm going to be doing on, we'll call it leverage education. We're going to talk a little bit about position sizing. We're going to talk about, how leverage works, what ROE is, return on equity. We'll talk a little bit about fees as well, and I'm specifically going to be referring to the Bitmex platform. I have a simple spreadsheet that I put together that kind of discusses all of these different things, and so yeah, I'd like to talk through it. So let's, of course, before I get started, go through disclaimers. I'm not your financial advisor. This isn't financial advice. This is for educational purposes only, and you're responsible for your own trades, managing your own risk, and doing your own research. And this is just my opinion. And again, let's go ahead and take a look here. So I am looking at a spreadsheet that I put together, and I mainly created this to look at fees, to calculate how much in fees you would be charged for placing a limit order or a market order. So let's start with at the very top. So we have what's in your wallet balance. So what's in your wallet. So I've started this with the assumption that you just have one Bitcoin inside of your wallet. And I have this set to leveraged use as 1x leverage. 1x leverage is the equivalent of you going and just buying or selling on a spot exchange. With the exception when you go long with 1x leverage, you're actually gaining Bitcoin, whereas if you go long on like Coinbase, you're not gaining any Bitcoin moving up, you're just gaining on your US dollars. We'll leave that topic for another time. But essentially, when you're using one Bitcoin in your wallet and you're using 1x leverage, your available balance is one Bitcoin. You can trade with one Bitcoin, which is basically your wallet times your leverage. That's how much you have available to trade. Wallet times leverage is your available balance. Which means if the price of Bitcoin is trading at $10,000, I can make a $10,000 position on Bitmex. So that's very simple. One Bitcoin with 1x leverage at a price of $10,000 has basically an available balance of $10,000 that I can be placing on a trade if Bitcoin is trading at $10,000. All right, so now if I change this to 2x leverage, if I change that from 1x leverage to 2x leverage, my available balance that I can use to trade is now 2 Bitcoin because it's doubling how much I have compared to what's in my wallet, which means I can now create a $20,000 position. This would be using all of my balance for that trade. It's how much is available to me, okay? So again, at an entry price of $10,000, sorry, not an entry price, but a Bitcoin price of $10,000, I have $20,000 that I have available to me to place this order. So if the price of Bitcoin changes, let's say the price of Bitcoin goes to $10,150, I now have $20,300 that's available to me to make a trade. All right, so the next part of this is how many executed contracts are you going to buy? Let's move this back to that Bitcoin is worth $10,000. Again, I have 2x leverage, which means I can make a $20,000 position, or 20,000 contracts, whichever you'd like to hear. One contract is worth $1 US, so I'm going to make reference to this as a $10,000 or a $20,000 position. So as far as executed contracts go, I'm going to use all of my available balance, and I'm going to put a $20,000 position. That's how much it's executed at an entry price of $10,000, which means Bitcoin is trading at $10,000 when I make this $20,000 position. All right. So let's look at this from an open price of $10,000, and where are we looking to close? Let's say we're going to close this position at $10,500. All right, so that is a 5% increase in the price of Bitcoin. Moving from $10,000 to $10,500 is an increase of 5%. Now, that increase of 5%, that is basically a spot change in Bitcoin. So if you were to go to, say, Coinbase and buy Bitcoin at $10,000 and it goes to $10,500, your profit is 5%. That would be at 1x leverage. And again, remember that when you're trading on Bitmex, although everything is based on US dollars, you are changing your Bitcoin balance, or in this case, your XBT balance. So a 5% profit is not just a 5% profit in US dollars, it's a 5% profit on your Bitcoin balance. So if you started with 1 Bitcoin and you had a 5% profit, you are going to be taking your 1 Bitcoin times, or really plus 5%. So 1.05. So you now have 1.05 Bitcoin. Now, if you go from $10,000 to, say, $9,500, you are now losing 5%. So now you're basically going to be 0.95. Now you have 0.95 Bitcoin. So you are losing Bitcoin in addition to losing US dollars. Now, if you're using 2x leverage, this example over here was using just spot buying, or really, a 1x leverage trade. If you go to 2x leverage, this is multiplied by 2 then. So if we go from $10,000 to $10,500, that is a 1x trade of 5%. But now if I'm doing this on 2x, I'm now making 10% because I am using twice the amount of money that I actually have. If I've got 1 Bitcoin and I'm making a $20,000 position, I'm doubling my proceeds and I'm doubling my losses as well, which is why leverage trading can be extremely dangerous. So this 5% is now multiplied by 2, by whatever leverage that I'm using. So let's go ahead and just change our formula here. Actually, rather, let's go ahead and, so we're going to do leveraged profit. We'll do leveraged P&L. Whenever you see P&L, that stands for profit and loss. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this F1 minus, F2 minus F1 divided by F1, and then we're going to multiply this by the leverage used. So now we have a leveraged profit and loss of 10%. So if I increase this, this is going to continue to increase or decrease more and more, based on how much leverage I'm using. And the reason why you see ROE instead of ROI, return on equity, versus return on investment, is just because you have $20,000 available to you at 2x leverage doesn't mean you're going to execute $20,000 in your trade. You may only want to put in $500. Okay, so let's say for a moment you have 1 Bitcoin. You're using 10x leverage. Okay, so you're going to see this leverage P&L go crazy here in a minute. 10x leverage. So at 10x leverage, a 5% profit is going to yield you 50% return on whatever you invested of your wallet balance. So if you have 1 Bitcoin here and you executed maybe only, I looks obviously I can have a $100,000 contract. I'm only putting in 20,000 of my available balance in the trade. So I'm only putting in 20% of this. Well, at the end of the day, you're not really doing 10x leverage. You're not really making 50% on your entire account. You're making 50% on 20% of your account because I have $100,000 available to me at 10x leverage. But if I'm only executing $20,000, I'm only using 20% of my balance. So this is a 50% profit on 20% of my balance because I'm only entering 20% of my available balance, which in actuality, you probably should only be doing 2x leverage because that's what you are utilizing of your balance. Some benefits to this are by using lower leverage, you have you're lowering your risk. You're lowering your risk. You're lowering your reward, but you're lowering your risk, and that is important. If you have $500 in your account, let's see if I can calculate this real quick. Would that be 0.05? That's going to be $500 in your account at 1x leverage. So that's how much I have in my account with a 0.05 BTC balance at a price of $10,000. That is $500 that's in my account. So at 1x leverage, I can create a $500 position. That's using all of my balance at 1x leverage. My liquidation is probably like $1 million or $10 million. Basically, you're not going to get liquidated on a short position on 1x leverage. But if I change this to 2x leverage, okay, pay attention here. If I change this to 2x leverage, I have $1,000 available to me because I'm going to be borrowing $500 from the exchange. But if I'm only doing a $500 position, I'm really only doing 1x. I'm only using half of my account. I'm only using half of my account. So again, at 2x leverage, on a 5% spot change, that's going to be a 10% profit or a 10% loss. It really depends on where the price goes, but we're assuming an entry of $10,000 and an exit of $10,500. So we're assuming that that's where we're entering, that's where we're exiting, and at 2x leverage, that's going to yield a 10% profit. But if you're only doing half of your account, because we're doing 2x leverage, and we're only doing a $500 trade, this is only a 10% increase on half of your account. In order to fully recognize a 10% profit or loss on your entire account, so in other words, if you want that 0.05 Bitcoin to go to 0.055 Bitcoin, you've got to use all of the contracts available. Now, I'm not necessarily recommending this. I am an advocate of proper position sizing, and I talk about using like 3 to 5x leverage, but in actuality, in my own experience, I only do cross leverage, which is something that only advanced traders should really do, because it really relies on you to position yourself appropriately and know what you've got and know what you're willing to risk and really to have proper trade management. But nonetheless, what this is referred to as isolating your margin. And if you're isolating your margin, you're sort of forced to position yourself appropriately. And so this is why for beginners, this is important for you to use. Anywhere between 2 to 3 to maybe 5x leverage is appropriate. Let's take a look at fees real quick. So taking a look at fees on Bitmex, there's market orders and there's limit orders. To make a market order, we call those maker orders. There's a 0.075% fee. And if you're going to be doing a limit order, we call those sorry, let me flip and reverse that. You're going to get a rebate on limit orders, and that's going to be a 0.025%. So to do a market order, you're going to be charged by the exchange, and to do a limit order, the exchange is actually going to pay you to basically build the order books and to allow your trades to get eaten by makers, by market makers, market movers. So if I'm doing a market order of 1,000 contracts, my fee is going to be 75 cents or 7,500 Satoshis. If I'm going to move this to a limit order, and people actually make money off of this. If I'm doing a limit order, I'm going to make 25 cents or 2,500 Satoshis on this $1,000 contract. Now that's not very significant. But if you're going to do rapid ordering and you're going to be getting in and out of positions frequently, if you can do that in a profitable way, you can make a decent amount off of limit orders. So basically you get in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out, over and over and over. if you can time the market that way, you can make a decent amount of money. But if you're working with, like a 1 Bitcoin account and you're using 10x leverage, these fees add up really fast. So if I'm going to do a $100,000 order, well, here we can see I just made $25 simply for the fact that I am executing a trade. Just because I executed a trade, I made $25. And if I do the same thing to get out of the trade, I made another $25. But on the flip side, if I do a market order, I'm now losing $75 on this trade just to market in or market out. And if I do this twice, market in and market out, I'm now losing $150. So you can make a decent amount, and you have to consider fees as part of your calculation for your profit and loss, because here we're talking about entering at 10,000, exiting at 10,500. So obviously on a 10x leverage trade, that's 50%. That's a significant amount on that trade. But you also have to account that I'm going to be losing, $75 or $150 if I'm going to be using market trades to enter and exit. Of course, you could reduce that to limit in and market out, or market in and limit out, whatever works for you. But these fees, on Bitmex to do a market order, it costs you 0.075% to make a market order, and you get paid 0.025% to do a limit order, to place an order in the order books. But again, one last summary, and I think this is where a lot of people get it wrong. If I have 1 Bitcoin in my account at $10,000, and I do a $10,000 trade, I'm not doing 50% on my entire account. I'm doing 50% on 10% of my account, because at 10x leverage, I have $100,000 available to me. But if I'm only using $10,000, I'm only using 10%. In order to realize exactly 50% of my entire account, I have to use all of the available contracts to me. And that is how I can add 50% to my account. To go from 1 to 1.5 Bitcoin, I have to use all 100,000 contracts available to me. And that would be at 10x leverage. Now, I'm going to say something, and I want you guys to hear me. You should really never go more than 10x leverage. I only advocate to somewhere between 3 and 5%, or sorry, 3 and 5x leverage, because that is the safest route. 3x leverage, I have 30,000 available to me, so there's 30,000. Adding 15% to my account for a 5% move is reasonable. That's reasonable. Don't do more than 3 to 5x leverage. Don't be in it for for the gambling mentality. Keep yourself conservative. Trade often, but trade small, and that's going to be your key to success. Because on the flip side, if this goes from $10,000 to $9,500, at 10x leverage, you are now losing half of your account. Do you want to go from 1 Bitcoin to 0.5 Bitcoin? I know I wouldn't want to. So you have to be careful, and don't allow this to slip this far out of your favor. You want to make sure to position yourself and have a good trade setup. Don't buy just because the price is going up. Don't sell just because the price is going down. You need to have a proper trade strategy. And to have a proper trade strategy is where you're going to succeed. All right, that is my thoughts on leverage trading and return on equity and all of that. If this video did help you in any way, shape, or form, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. If you would like to open up a Bitmex account, I've put a referral link in the description below. And wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a good day, good night, good evening.